Welcome to the Right Around the Murray Festival and the announcement of winning entries in the AlburyCity Annual Short Story Award. My name is Carina Clement. I'm the team leader of AlburyCity's Library and Museum, and on behalf of the Right Around the Murray team, I'm delighted to introduce you to this event in our amazing Albury Library Museum. In normal years, the hub of the Right Around the Murray Festival. Not a normal year this year, of course. Look, I would firstly like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional owners of the land on which I am sitting on this evening, and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. The AlburyCity Short Story Awards have been running for 16 years and have been integrated into the Right Around the Murray Festival since its inception in 2017. In that time, we have been really blown away, impressed, stimulated and moved by the passion, creativity and skills of the competition entrants, and 220 in this regard has been no exception. In many regards, of course, 2020 is an asterisk year, as we all attempt to come to grips with the ongoing social disruption and uncertainty. It is immensely pleasing that Right Around the Murray has been able to proceed, albeit in a predominantly online format, and pleasing again that we're able to announce our short story winners as part of the festival. In 2020, we received a record number of 217 entries in the competition, and entries from all over Australia, which is fantastic. Potentially, our asterisk year has offered time and stimulation for contemplation and writing, which is a great thing. I would like to acknowledge and thank our shortlisting judges, Jane Downing and Kate Rotherham, who had that immense task of reading all 217 entries, and a very rewarding task it was, I know, for them. Congratulations to all entrants, and particularly our shortlisted entrants who are listed on the Right Around the Murray website. All winning entries will also be, full transcripts of winning entries will also be published on the WAM website after our announcement tonight. Our judge this year is Lucy Treloar, author of critically acclaimed novels, Wolf Island and Salt Creek, as well as numerous short fiction and non-fiction. As well as being the short story judge, Lucy has been a major contributor to the Right Around the Murray Festival this year, participating in a conversation with Kate Rotherham on the art of short story writing, and launching the WAM program last month together with James Bradley and Jason Steger. I'm delighted now to pass to Lucy to share her reflections on the shortlisted entries and announce the winners of the 2020 AlburyCity Short Story Awards. Over to you, Lucy.
Hello. I'm so delighted to be part of this year's Right Around the Murray Festival, and especially to have been asked to be a judge in the AlburyCity Short Story competition. Thanks to Anne-Marie Ellis for entrusting me with this task, and to Kate Rotherham and Jane Downing for whittling down the record pool of entries to this incredible shortlist of 12. Huge thanks to the City of Albury and Dimmicks for supporting this award. It's an award that does so much. It creates a community of writers around itself, people who are each working towards submitting a story that they're proud of or maybe worried about, or thrilled with, or frightened of the response to. There is a lovely connectedness in that, I think. I sometimes think writers are like bees in a hive, their minds humming away, and although it's a solitary kind of pursuit, it's nice to think of everyone's minds working along at the same time. An award like this gives writers a reason to stretch their skills, to really interrogate their work, to hone sentences, paragraphs and narratives to become their best, truest selves. Purpose and endpoint improves writing craft. A focus such as this not only drives a writer, but also provides a kind of test. You're measuring yourself against other writers. You've taken the important step of sending something that matters to you, that you've worked on hard, and that might therefore feel personal into the world. Caring about your work and the effort involved makes sending it out a personal thing, although people sometimes try and pretend it's not. So you've been brave. Every entry of a story anywhere, whether it be a competition or a journal, is a step into the writing world. It's becoming part of something bigger. With the contraction of arts funding nationally, writers' festivals and awards are more important than ever in helping your work reach an audience, potentially getting your name into the public eye. Along with publications in literary magazines and journals, writing competitions such as these are one of the best ways of getting the attention of a publisher. They not only tell you something about where you are in your writing, they indicate to publishers that you're worth taking notice of. That makes the AlburyCity Short Story Award and others like it among the key pillars of Australian writing and the whole world surrounding it. The AlburyCity Short Story Competition is important as well as a prize that arises from, supports and celebrates the region. It provides an important counterpoint to the emphases of state capitals and helps break down the divide between what can often feel like two completely separate worlds. I loved reading the occasional sharp perspective of characters in regional towns on cities and city people, and of this regional perspective as a fundamental part of the Australian writing world, as it is of Australia itself. It's something we need more of in writing, and it's so important that the City of Albury supports and celebrates that. Before saying a little about the stories, I'd say to people who entered and didn't make the shortlist to remember that every bit of writing you do, every time you push yourself, is improving your work. None of it is wasted. So you might not achieve what you dreamed of. This is the writing life quite often. It's all experience. I sometimes tell the story of a competition I won, actually at the Right Around the Murray Festival about 10 years ago, to have a meeting with an agent. I drove up from Melbourne, it was 5 hours or so, and we had our meeting, and honestly, it did not go as I dreamed. She didn't really like my writing, and when I left, I was pretty crushed. I drove home again, and when I recount the story, I say I went to bed with a bottle of whiskey, which is a bit of kind of writer's hyperbole. I kind of moped around, and I'm sure I did have a whiskey that evening. And then I kind of got really annoyed and picked myself up and kept writing. Sometimes what separates writers is a kind of stubbornness. Entering this competition might well be a beginning for you, but if you didn't achieve the outcome that you were hoping for, you can decide that it is not an end. Cultivate stubbornness, cultivate a focus on the words, on making them right, and persevere. US writer Anne Lamott, whose book of writing advice, Bird by Bird, I recommend to everyone, says, all the good stories are all out there waiting to be told in a fresh, wild way. What you have to offer is your own sensibility, maybe your own sense of humour or insider pathos or meaning. All of us can sing the same song, and there will still be 4 billion different renditions. So think about entering next year, if it's not too early to say that. And now about these remarkable stories. A writing teacher I once had said something that I always remember: leave some blood on the page. Not literal blood, of course, though Hemingway said there's nothing to writing really. All you have to do is open your veins and bleed. All writers have probably felt this to some degree. The knowledge that you have to go to hard and uncomfortable places sometimes to tell the truth that is at the heart of your story. In each of these shortlisted stories, I felt this to one extent or another. In the best of the stories, it was the beating heart, the determination to speak that truth that I was so aware of. These were stories of the turning points in people's lives, the events around the death of a sibling, a moment of reckoning between father and daughter, the turning point into adult life, the discovery of a family secret, the void left by a lost child, the complexity of broken families and their troubled dynamics. They're about escape from the past, grief, deception, hope, and broken hearts. And despite the way this summary might sound, there was so much in them that made me smile or laugh every time I read them. They're stories about what it is to be human and how we feel. That surely is one of the greatest gifts of writing. These stories share keen observation and awareness of feeling for the telling details that create character, whether that's dialogue, the ways people move, the things they wear or eat, the things they do, what holds interest, an understanding of what it means to be human itself for all of us. Every one of them had moments that had me stopping in wonderment or deep envy at the perfect phrase, the perfect evocation of a moment, the perfect revelatory moment. Although every one of these stories had things that I admired, in the end, it was the cohesiveness of a piece, the feeling of a world and its people fully inhabited that made me return to a story and find more. That's what I was looking for. This is related to confidence with the writing itself, confidence with form, of being led by the life of the story rather than the story conception, and by a sense of dimension, of speaking to something larger while also revealing the story's world and its characters. The placed stories became richer with each reading. They had great depth and resonance. As a reader, I felt enlarged by them, understanding something new about the human condition, the pain and joy and laughter that can bring. There are layers in them and things I kept wondering about. They share an originality, a confidence, a willingness to see the shape of the story, to allow it to develop into its true self, to surprise even the writer and to draw the reader in. And now for the winning entries. In third place, Cigarettes and T-Shirts by Ellen Roger. Cigarettes and T-Shirts is formally experimental, but always engaging. It's a story of old friends, aging, self-centeredness, and the ways that can separate people from really living. With wonderful skill, the first-person narrator is revealed as much through her observations as others, including her friends and their reactions to her, as through personal reflection. The author reveals her to the reader with a cool, clear, but empathetic eye. Though somewhat bleak and never less than deeply truthful, this story is shot through with sharp humour and insight, a moving, subtle and originally structured story of a day in which the unreliable first-person narrator approaches self-knowledge. I loved it. Congratulations to Ellen. In second place was The Dismissal by Claire Arman. The Dismissal is one of the stories I kept thinking about and returning to, each time noticing its effortless compression, richness of detail and layering of meaning. In a beautifully sustained and economical piece of storytelling, rendered through a close third-person voice, the author depicts an almost theatrical world, with a summer cherry orchard as its setting and a motley band of fruit pickers as its players. Over the course of the season, fruit pickers meet and mix, lives are changed and futures decided. Its two principal characters, Justin and Sue, are shown in a series of small, perfectly chosen and beautifully evoked snapshots, and this time is revealed as the hinge on which lives turn, when Justin must learn or decide the kind of person he truly is. Though rooted within its historical time frame, The Dismissal is layered with meaning, speaking to larger truths about life itself and even Australia as a whole. Claire Arman has a keen and compassionate eye and writes with great skill and insight. She's an author to watch. And now for the winner. Very exciting. The winner is Dark About the Light by Rob Johnson. Dark About the Light is a beautifully rounded and enthralling story of the interactions between a father and son in the aftermath of a rural car accident. The story, recounted through the perspective of an immaculately sustained, compelling and otherworldly child narrator, achieves great narrative traction and pace, while still leaving the reader room to speculate and wonder. The author's ability to evoke and inhabit this world is evident in every line. Shot through with tenderness and a father and son's grief and yearning for a lost mother and wife, the story explores the wounds of this family's life, the vulnerability of a child, and of a father out of his depth. deeply compassionate, and an entirely absorbing and cohesive read. It's just wonderful. I'd like to welcome Rob now into the screen and to say congratulations. It was a genuine thrill to read this story. Yeah, huge achievement, and yeah, it's just such a pleasure to read and reread.
Thank you so much. That's amazing to hear. I'm so glad.
Well, it's fantastic. Before getting you to read an excerpt of this story, I wondered if I could just ask you a little bit about where the conception for this story came from. How did it start for you?
Yeah, sure. Funnily enough, when I first started writing this story, or like first had the idea, it was kind of contrived. Like I was reading this novel 2666 by Roberto Bolaño, and which is a really great, weird, long, interesting mystery crime novel. And one of the parts of this novel is about this journalist who gets accidentally caught up in this weird underworld of boxing in Mexico. And I was reading this book and I just loved how the mystery was set up and unfolding, and how all of a sudden, without even realizing, you were just enjoying spending time with this character, and all of a sudden you were just in a really weird place. And I just loved that. And I was like, God, that's good. I want to write a story about a journalist getting involved in something weird. So this story initially was about a journalist snooping around on a farm because he thinks something weird is going on. And is there something weird going on or not? And that was the original story, but I kind of couldn't get it to work, and I was feeling a bit silly that I was kind of essentially writing a fan fiction of this thing in 2666 about this journalist. But I was interested by the son, who was not initially the narrator, but I was interested by that character that I was writing in this journalist story. And then it just, I guess, as it sometimes does, I was just like sort of writing and not feeling particularly inspired about what I was writing, but then just became really increasingly interested in the voice of this little boy. And that was kind of it, in a weird way, I guess, and it's nice when it happens. A lot of what this story ended up being, just I made it up kind of as I was writing it. I had a vague idea of like what the potential mystery behind this story might be, but yeah, and I was so it's so lovely to hear you say that you thought the voice was interesting and compelling, because I guess I felt the same way about it, which is why I wanted to keep spending time with this little boy, and why he ended up being the sole kind of perspective in this story. Yeah, so kind of that. It started with outside influence. It just happened.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just such a great example of the life of the story kind of taking over from what you originally conceived of. I love that kind of the power of that sort of thing. I wondered if you would be able to read an excerpt of this story for us now. I'd love to hear a little bit. I'm sure all of us would.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is starting up sort of about a third of the way through this story. I went down into the yard and round the back to see Marcus. He was close to the fence, nuzzling the grass with his nose. There were flies on him. I counted 17, not including the ones buzzing around his bum. I got up on the fence and put my chin on my arms. Marcus didn't look up, but he moved around a bit to face me. If he wanted to, he could charge right at me. He didn't want to, though. Marcus is my mate. One time he charged at Chook, but only because Chook was being rough. Marcus is actually very nice. He never kicks, and he's very patient when Dad gives him a wash, and he lets the Chooks hang around him and even sit on him sometimes. Chooks being the birds, not Chook Barry, the man. Chook is called Chook because his name is Henry, which goes to hen, which goes to Chook. So it sort of has to do with chickens, but not really. Sometimes I talk to Marcus, but mostly we like to be quiet. I wonder what Marcus would sound like if he could talk. I think he would sound like Dad, but Dad when he's doing a voice, the voice he does when he gets off the phone with the insurance man or when he sees the Prime Minister on TV. Serious, but also a joke, but a bit scary because the voice can get very loud very quick. I started to do the voice, but I couldn't do it too well. Then I started to think about last night with Arnie. He was halfway out the ute when we found him. I don't know if he tried to climb out or if he just ended up that way, but he still had his seatbelt on, so either way, he couldn't get out. At first, I thought the ute's engine was trying to turn over. Then we got closer and I realized the sound was Arnie. I'd never heard someone do that sound before. If Arnie was an engine, you'd sell him for scrap just based off the sound, all rattly and wet and with bits in it. Dad said, Jesus effing Christ. He didn't say effing, he said the swear. He said, stay there, Sammy. And I stopped and he went down to the ute with the torch and he said, Arnie, mate, can you hear me? Arnie, it's Dob, it's Cole Dobson. And I just stood there in the dark and waited. I looked around and I could see the lights from the house, the ones Dad had switched on when he got out of bed. The veranda light and the kitchen light were taking turns being bright and dim. The lights always go funny when Mum's around. Dad said he'd have to replace the generator, but there's nothing wrong with the generator. It's Mum that does it. She does it every time. I looked back around and Dad was saying, Sammy, Sammy, Sammy. And I don't know if he started saying it when I turned or if him saying it made me turn. Dad said, come here, mate, I need your help. I started walking down to the ute. It was leaning up on its back wheels like it was trying to sniff a treat in the tree, but really it was because Arnie had driven into the tree so fast. I said, will it explode, Dad? And he said, no, mate. I kept pricking my feet on rocks and sticks because it was dark and the ute was off the road. Dad put the torch on me and he said, Christ, Sammy, where's your shoes? And he came over and picked me up and carried me to the ute and put me in the trailer. Sorry, mate, Dad said. There's loads of glass. Dad gave me the torch. I need you to keep the light on my hands, okay, he said, so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, Dad, I said. Mr. Mogg needs our help, so we really need to pay attention, okay, mate? Okay, Dad, I said. I'd never heard Dad call Arnie Mr. Mogg before. It made him sound like he was from a book. I held the torch in one hand and I held onto the side of the trailer with the other. I had to hold on because the ute was leaning, and if I let go, I'd slide down the trailer like it was a slippery dip. We have a slippery dip in the yard, but it's rusty, and if you go on it, your pants go brown. Don't put the light on Arnie, Sammy. Just hold it on my hands, Dad said. I held the light on Dad's hands. They were covered with blood. I'd seen blood on Dad's hands lots of times, usually when he was helping the cows have their babies. Arnie's blood looked the same as the cow's blood. Dad was talking to Arnie, and Arnie was talking back, but not with words. He would breathe slow and then fast, and his breath was like slop in a bucket. Dad stopped talking to Arnie and just said, F, 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 F. And that's a little excerpt and talk about the light.
Absolutely wonderful. Thanks so much for reading it. I'm sure everyone is going to be desperate to read what happens next or to hear it for themselves. It's fantastic. Yeah, I really, really recommend this story. Look, congratulations again, Rob, on your amazing achievement, for writing that wonderful story, for sharing it with the world, for sending it out and, yeah, giving us the pleasure of reading it and experiencing it.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Yeah, no, it really was a genuine pleasure reading it. You can read this story and the other place getting stories on the Right Around the Murray competition website and on the AlburyCity website as well, on the short story page. Yeah, so I encourage everyone to read these stories. They're absolutely wonderful, these top 3 stories, and especially Rob's, obviously. Thank you for coming along to this award ceremony in this strange year, and congratulations. Yeah, and congratulations again. Thank you.